The first day Amara took coffee to the old woman in the Lagos City Park, she didn't do it out of habit. She did it out of an impulse that squeezed her chest, as if someone had whispered, "Don't leave her alone today." And what Amara didn't know, what no one knew, was that this small steaming cup was going to ignite a truth so vast that when it finally came to light, a proud millionaire would be left speechless, his heart laid bare. Because sometimes the most powerful stories don't start in mansions or luxury offices. They begin on a worn bench, in an ordinary park, with a tired woman shivering slightly and an employee who decides to look where everyone else turns away. But listen to this, because if you stay, you'll understand why this story has made even those who swore they felt nothing weep. Amara took coffee every day to an unknown woman, and when the owner of the house where Amara worked found out, he believed it was foolishness, a waste of time, a strange habit, until one day by chance he saw her with his own eyes, and in that instant, something broke within him. It wasn't because of the coffee, it wasn't because of the woman, it was because of the way Amara handed her that cup, as if she were holding something sacred. It was because of the way the old woman looked at Amara, as if Amara was the last good thing left in the world, and it was because of what the millionaire heard next, words so simple and so devastating that they forced him to confront a truth he had been hiding for years. Before I continue, let me tell you something. If you've ever felt that the world has forgotten good people, subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind you that a small gesture can change a destiny. And now tell me in the comments, what would you do if you discovered that someone close to you is secretly helping a person on the street every day? Would it bother you or inspire you? Leave it written, because what's coming will make you think differently. Amara was 32 years old, light-complexioned, with dark hair neatly tied in a practical bun, and a gaze that always seemed to be asking permission to exist. She had come to Lagos from Obinagu, a small town in Enugu State, seeking work to support her 7-year-old son, Kelechi, who was her reason for getting up even when her body couldn't. She worked in the house of Chief Emeka Nwadike, a renowned businessman across the city, owner of construction companies, hotels, and investments. One of those men who appear in magazines with perfect smiles, but who almost never look you in the eye in person. Emeka lived in an elegant area, near Ikoyi, in an enormous house, with large windows that reflected the sky as if the outside world were merely a decoration. He had staff, a gardener, a driver, a cook, and he had something else, a heavy silence, as if that house were filled with unspoken things. Amara was the new one, who had replaced 2 other employees in less than 3 months, and that already said a lot. From the first day, Mama Ngozi, the head housekeeper, had warned her in a low voice while showing her where the cleaning supplies were. "My child, here you work fast, without questions, and without meddling where you're not called. The chief is complicated." Amara didn't ask what complicated meant, because when you have to pay rent, buy medicine, and send your child to school, you learn not to ask too many questions. But even so, some things were noticeable. Chief Emeka Nwadike was not a happy man, nor was he even a calm man. Sometimes Amara would see him go out to the terrace with his phone glued to his ear and his brow furrowed, as if every call were an argument. Other times she would hear him walking through the hallway at dawn with long, impatient strides, like a caged lion. And at the dining room table, there was always an extra plate set, an empty place, as if someone were missing. Amara noticed it but said nothing, until one day, as she was taking out the rubbish, Emeka passed near her and spoke without looking at her. "Don't throw the bags in the large bin. Use the one at the back." Amara nodded. "Yes, Chief Nwadike." Emeka paused for a second as if he had expected another reaction. "What's your name?" "Amara, sir." "Amara," he repeated, tasting the name as if he didn't like it. "Good, just do your work and don't give me any problems." And he left. It wasn't a direct insult, but Amara felt the humiliation all the same, because some people don't need to shout to make you feel less. Still, Amara endured. She endured the long days, she endured the demands, she endured the coldness, until the old woman in the park appeared. The Lagos City Park was a 15-minute walk from the house, and Amara passed through it when she went to buy bread or fruit at Obalende Market. She saw her for the first time on a Monday. The old woman was sitting on a bench with her back hunched and a coat too thin for the morning chill. Her gray hair was disheveled and her lips were dry. Beside her, a small plastic bag with 2 things inside, a piece of day, old bread, and a napkin. Amara couldn't help but look at her, not out of curiosity, but out of that jolt of reality that leaves you breathless. Because the old woman reminded her of her grandmother, the same gaze, the same tired dignity, the same way of being alone, even surrounded by people. Amara kept walking, but after 3 steps, she stopped, turned around, and approached. "Excuse me, Mama, are you all right?" The old woman looked up with suspicion, as if the world had taught her that every kind question carried a trap. "I'm alive," she replied dryly. "That's enough." Amara felt a pinch in her heart. She didn't insist. "Well, if you need anything, I pass by here often." The old woman let out a humorless laugh. "People pass," she said. "Yes, they do pass." And she went back to staring ahead. Amara left, but that day she couldn't get the old woman out of her head. That night, while preparing Kelechi's lunchbox, she found herself staring at the boiling water and thought, how can someone remember their entire life on a bench? The next day, she made extra coffee, poured it into a lidded cup, and put it in her bag. She didn't know why. She just knew she had to. From that day on, the coffee became a ritual. It wasn't expensive coffee. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was just a hot coffee with 2 sachets of sugar that Amara saved from the dining room at work. When she handed it to her, the old woman at first said nothing, just took it with trembling hands and drank slowly, as if the warmth soothed her soul. Amara would sit beside her for a few minutes. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they just sat in silence. And in that silence, Amara understood that there were pains that didn't ask for a solution, they asked for company. The old woman's name was Mama Ada. She didn't want to say her surname at first, as if her surname was a door she didn't want to reopen, but with the days, she loosened up a bit. "Do you have children?" she asked one Thursday. "Yes, one. His name is Kelechi. He is my life." Mama Ada lowered her gaze. "I had one," she said, "and I lost him." Amara didn't ask how, because some topics felt like glass. She just gently squeezed her hand. "I'm sorry, Mama Ada." The old woman swallowed. "Don't say it like that, my child," she whispered, "because if you say it like that, it makes me want to cry." And Amara felt a lump in her throat. From then on, Amara didn't just bring coffee. Sometimes she brought a sweet bun, or an old sweater, or a fruit. Nothing that her son needed, nothing that took away from their essentials, but enough so that Mama Ada didn't feel invisible. And at some point, Amara began to notice something strange. Every time she mentioned her son, Mama Ada would become tense, as if that word opened a wound that was still bleeding. And every time Amara spoke of her work, of a big house in Ikoyi, Mama Ada would fall silent, looking at the ground with a strange expression, as if she were calculating something in her head, as if that information pained her in a personal way. Amara noticed it, but she didn't understand until the day Chief Emeka Nwadike followed her. Emeka had been observing details for weeks. Food from the fridge disappeared a little faster, coffee ran out sooner than normal, and some mornings Amara took a little longer to return when sent out for something. It wasn't much, but Emeka was the kind of man who noticed even the missing air. One night he called Mama Ngozi, the new one. "What does she do when she goes out?" Mama Ngozi tensed. "What do you mean, sir? Don't play innocent. Does she go to see someone? Bring people here? Steal?" Mama Ngozi's eyes widened. "No, sir. Amara is. She is hard-working." Emeka moved closer, serious. "Then tell me, why is she spending the house's things?" Mama Ngozi hesitated. I haven't seen her steal." Emeka clenched his jaw. "Tomorrow, I'm going to follow her." Mama Ngozi wanted to speak, but she fell silent, because in that house, when Chief Emeka made a decision, no one changed his mind. And that was how the next day Chief Emeka Nwadike ended up in the Lagos City Park, standing a few meters away, watching his employee deliver a coffee to an old woman, as if she were handing over her own heart. In his mind, Emeka already had a story formed. Amara is deceiving me. She's taking things. She's involved in something. But what he saw didn't fit his prejudice, because he saw no trickery, no malice. He saw something he didn't understand, compassion. And yet, his pride didn't allow him to feel tenderness. He felt anger. "What are you doing?" he growled, appearing suddenly. Amara almost dropped the cup of coffee. "Chief Nwadike." I. Mama Ada looked up, and for the first time, her expression changed completely. Her eyes widened, her face paled, and the cup trembled in her hands, as if she had seen a ghost. Emeka looked at the old woman and frowned. "Who is she?" Amara swallowed nervously. She is Mama Ada. I bring her coffee because..." Emeka cut her off. "With things from my house." Amara blushed. "It's not stealing, sir. I pay for it with my earnings. I only use the hot water from..." Emeka's voice was harsh. You don't decide who you help with my time. I pay you to work, not to play savior. Amara clenched her fists, holding back tears. I'm not playing, sir. She is alone. Emeka let out a short, cold laugh. And what's that to me? Is the whole city my responsibility now? Amara looked him in the eyes for the first time with courage. No, but it's everyone's responsibility not to turn a blind eye. The silence grew heavy. Emeka took a step towards Mama Ada. And what did you tell her to make her bring you things? Mama Ada was trembling, but not from fear of Emeka, but from something deeper, something old, something that was suffocating her. With a broken voice, Mama Ada uttered a phrase that changed the air of the park. I didn't ask her for anything, she whispered. She brings me coffee because she reminds me of someone I lost. Emeka froze. Who? Mama Ada slowly raised her gaze and looked at him with an intensity that disarmed him. My daughter. Amara's eyes widened. Emeka swallowed. Your daughter? Mama Ada clutched the cup to her chest, and with accumulated tears that finally dared to fall, she said, Yes, and you also remind me of her, Emeka. Emeka stepped back as if he had been struck. How do you know my name? Mama Ada breathed with difficulty, her voice breaking. Because I watched you grow up, and in that second, Amara understood that what was happening was much bigger than a cup of coffee. And Emeka, for the first time in a long time, felt fear. Because if that old woman was telling the truth, then something from his past was about to explode. And that was the only thing Chief Emeka Nwadike could not control with money. The silence in the Lagos City Park grew thick. The sounds of the park children playing, the balloon seller, the distant song of a street musician seemed to have faded around that bench. Chief Emeka Nwadike was not a man easily surprised. He had faced financial crises, lawsuits, corporate betrayals, but that phrase, I watched you grow up, hit him like a stone in the chest. I don't know who you are, he said with a firm voice, though something inside him trembled, and I don't like being played with. Mama Ada did not look away. I'm not playing, Emeka. Amara watched the scene, her heart racing. She felt like she was witnessing something she shouldn't, but she also couldn't leave. There was too much emotion contained in the air. Emeka clenched his fists. My mother died years ago. Mama Ada closed her eyes for a second. A tear rolled down her time-worn cheek. Yes, she died to you. That phrase unsettled him. What does that mean? Mama Ada took a deep breath. It means they told you she died because it was easier than explaining the truth. Amara felt a chill run down her spine. Emeka took a step back. You're confused. No. Mama Ada's voice was soft, but firm. Confused I was, for many years, waiting for you to return. Emeka's world began to crack from within. His mother, they had always told him, had died when he was 5 years old, that it had been a sudden illness, that his father had done everything possible. There was never an open wake, never many photos, never details, only silence. And now this woman on a bench was saying, No, it's not possible. Emeka shook his head. My father would never lie about something like that. Mama Ada let out a bitter laugh. Your father never tolerated that I wanted to leave. Amara's eyes widened. Leave? Yes. Mama Ada looked at her trembling hands. He wanted me to be the perfect wife, quiet, submissive, but I had dreams. I had a voice. Emeka felt the ground beneath his expensive shoes was no longer firm. My father was a respected man. He was a powerful man, she corrected, and he bought silences. Emeka's heart pounded hard. Are you inventing this, Mama Ada? She looked at him with a mixture of pain and tenderness. You have the same look when you get angry, just like when you were a child and didn't want to sleep. Amara felt like she couldn't breathe. Emeka began to breathe faster. Enough. But Mama Ada continued, knowing it might be the only chance she would get. They took you from my side one night. They said it was for your good, that I wasn't stable, that you needed discipline. Emeka felt something inside him wanted to listen and something wanted to run. That's a lie. They forced me to sign papers. They said if I didn't, I would never see you again. Mama Ada's voice broke. I signed, believing it was temporary. Amara covered her mouth with her hand. The park no longer existed, only that story was breathing between them. Emeka remembered fragments. A small suitcase, a hurried hug, his father's voice saying, Your mother is sick. She can't take care of you. Emeka's voice grew softer. I remember she was crying. Mama Ada closed her eyes. I never stopped looking for you. A tremor crossed Emeka's body. And why are you here? Why in this park? Because I knew you lived nearby. She looked directly at him. I didn't want to ruin your life. I just wanted to see you, even from afar. Amara felt a knot in her chest. And the coffee? She asked in a low voice. Mama Ada smiled faintly. The coffee was the first gesture of kindness I received in years. Emeka watched her with a mixture of rage and bewilderment. And why didn't you come to my house? Why didn't you knock on the door? Mama Ada lowered her gaze. Because I feared you would close your heart to me, just like your father did. That blow was direct. Emeka had always been cold, distant, controlling, and now this woman was suggesting he had become the very thing he criticized. You have no proof of anything, he said, trying to regain control. Mama Ada reached into her worn bag and pulled out a small, old, wrinkled envelope. I kept this. Emeka took it with stiff hands. It was a photograph. Himself, small, sitting on a swing, and the woman behind him, young, smiling. Emeka's heart stopped for a second. That photo wasn't in any album in his house. Where did you get this? From my purse. I've carried it with me all these years. Amara watched as the millionaire's face began to change. It was no longer arrogance. It was doubt. Emeka ran his finger over the image. This proves nothing. You have a scar on your left knee, Mama Ada said suddenly. You got it falling off that same swing. I carried you crying to the kitchen and promised you I would always be there. Emeka felt a punch in his stomach. That scar was there, and no one outside his close family knew it. Amara watched as the impeccably dressed man began to lose his composure. If this is true, he whispered, then my whole life. He didn't finish the sentence, because it implied accepting that his father had separated him from his mother, that his history was incomplete, that his identity was built on a lie, and that was too much. Emeka turned halfway. I need to think. Emeka, Mama Ada said with a fragile voice, I didn't come to destroy you. I just wanted to know if you were happy. That question was the cruelest of all. Was he happy? He had money, prestige, respect, but happiness? Amara remembered the table with the empty plate, the nocturnal walks, the silence of that enormous house. Emeka didn't answer, just walked a few steps, but something stopped him. He turned again. If this is true, why did you never seek me out legally? Mama Ada breathed with difficulty. Because I had no resources, because after signing those papers, I was alone, because no one wanted to confront your father. Emeka felt his father's name beginning to weigh on him more than ever. Amara stepped forward. Chief Navadike, I didn't know any of this. I know, he said without looking at her. The park seemed to watch them. The balloon seller passed by, oblivious to the emotional earthquake happening on that bench. And what do you want now? Emeka finally asked. Mama Ada looked at him with sincere tears. Nothing. I don't want your money. I don't want your name. I just wanted to tell you that I never stopped loving you. Emeka's heart broke in a place that had been armored for years, because no one told him that. No one looked at him like that, and he suddenly understood something devastating. He had spent years building empires, but he had never built a home. Amara felt like she was witnessing a moment that would change everything. Emeka took a deep breath. I need proof, documents, something to confirm this. Mama Ada nodded. I have them. Not here, but I have them. The millionaire put the photo in his inner jacket pocket. I'm going to investigate. His voice was no longer harsh. It was vulnerable. Amara felt a small relief, but then Mama Ada added something that left him immobile. Your father not only separated me from you, he also hid something else. Emeka looked at her with tension. What? Mama Ada hesitated for a second. That you weren't his only child. The world broke again. Amara felt the air disappear. What are you saying? I'm saying, Mama Ada whispered, that before I left, I was pregnant. The silence was absolute. Emeka felt his heart leap from his chest. That's impossible. It's not. Amara put her hand to her chest. You had another child? Mama Ada lowered her gaze. Yes. Emeka took a step back. Where is he? Tears finally fell uncontrollably. I lost him too. The pain in her voice was so profound that no one could doubt her sincerity. Your father made sure I never saw him again. Emeka's world no longer had form. Not only had he lost a mother, but also a brother or sister he never knew. Is he alive? He asked, his voice broken. Mama Ada slowly shook her head. I don't know. Amara felt that this story was only beginning to be unearthed. Emeka looked at the woman in front of him. He no longer saw her as a stranger. He saw her as a possibility, as a mirror of the past. And for the first time in many years, he felt like crying, but pride still fought within him. If this is true, he finally said, then my father robbed me of more than a mother. Mama Ada nodded. He robbed you of the truth. The sun began to descend, slowly, coloring the park in golden hues. Amara understood that her small gesture of coffee had opened a gigantic door. A truth buried for decades was beginning to breathe. And the most unsettling thing was that they still needed to discover what had happened to that second child. Because if he was alive, that meant the Nwadike family was not what Emeka always believed. And if he wasn't, then someone had to answer for it. Emeka looked at Amara. "You don't work tomorrow." Her eyes widened. "Sir, come to my house at 8. I need you to hear something." Amara felt fear and curiosity at the same time. "Yes, sir." Emeka looked at Mama Ada again. "I promise nothing, but I will find out the truth." And in that instant, something changed. It wasn't reconciliation yet. It wasn't forgiveness. It was the beginning of a search. And when a man who always controlled everything decides to seek the truth, the past begins to tremble. That night, Chief Emeka Nwadike did not sleep. The photo remained on his desk, dimly lit by the Italian crystal lamp that had always seemed elegant to him, but now cast long, unsettling shadows. The image was real, too real. He could remember the swing. He could remember his mother's light dress. He could remember her perfume. What he could not remember was the moment she died, and that was destroying him from within. In the main bedroom of the Ikoyi mansion, the silence was unbearable. The clock struck 3 a.m. When Emeka got up, he put on a jacket and went down to the private study, where he kept family documents. If Mama Ada was telling the truth, there had to be traces. He opened the old metal file cabinet that had belonged to his father. Folders, deeds, wills, certificates. Everything was perfectly ordered, too perfect. Emeka began to review documents related to his childhood: birth certificate, school records, medical insurance. He looked for his mother's death certificate. It wasn't there. He felt a blow to his chest. He searched again with more anxiety. Nothing. How was it possible? He always believed he had seen it, always assumed it existed, but now he couldn't find any official proof of her death. Sweat dampened his hands. He picked up the phone, dialed the number of Barrister Oladele Bakare, the family lawyer for 30 years. "Emeka," Oladele answered in a sleepy voice. "Is something wrong? I need you to get me my mother's death certificate." There was a silence on the other end. "That's in the family archives, Emeka." "It's not." Oladele took a deep breath. "Your father handled many documents personally." "Perhaps." Emeka interrupted him firmly. "Did my mother really die when they said she died?" The silence was longer this time. Too long. "Emeka, those are things of the past." Emeka's heart stopped for a second. "Answer me," Oladele sighed. "Your father asked that the matter not be stirred up." That phrase was like a confirmation without saying it. "What matter? I can't talk on the phone." Emeka closed his eyes. Doubt was no longer a possibility. It was a reality. "Come first thing tomorrow morning. I'll be here," Oladele replied. Emeka hung up. He sank into the leather chair. For years he had defended his father's memory. He admired him, imitated him, and now he discovered that perhaps the man who taught him to be strong had been responsible for his greatest emptiness. At 8 o'clock sharp, Amara rang the mansion's doorbell. She wasn't wearing a uniform, just a simple beige dress and an evident expression of nervousness. Mama Nosy opened the door. "Come in, my dear. The chief is waiting for you." Amara walked down the long hallway with a strange feeling in her stomach. Emeka was standing in front of the large window, looking at the city. When she entered, he didn't turn immediately. "Do you trust that woman?" he asked without preamble. Amara swallowed. "Yes, sir." Emeka finally turned. His eyes were red, not from anger, but from something deeper. "Last night I checked documents. There is no death certificate for my mother." Amara felt a chill. Then someone lied. The doorbell rang again. Barrister Oladele Bakare entered minutes later with a black briefcase. He was an older man, elegant, with a gaze laden with years of secrets. Emeka greeted him gravely. "Sit down," Emeka ordered. Amara remained silent, almost invisible, but he didn't ask her to leave. That was already a change. Oladele opened the briefcase, took out an old folder, yellowed by time. "Your mother, Elvira Moreno, did not die in 1994, he finally said. Amara felt the air freeze. Emeka clenched his teeth. "Then, what happened?" Oladele hesitated. "Your father requested a legal separation. He alleged emotional instability. That's true?" "No, there was no medical evidence. It was a strategic decision." Emeka's heart beat with fury. "And He requested exclusive custody." Emeka felt the world spin. "And the supposed death?" Oladele lowered his gaze. "Your father decided to tell you she had passed away. He believed it was simpler than explaining the conflict." Amara covered her hand with her mouth. Emeka stood up abruptly. "They lied to me my entire life. His voice boomed in the study. Emeka, Oladele tried to calm him. Your father wanted to protect the family reputation. Protection? He spat the word with rage. He robbed me of my mother. The silence grew heavy. Amara watched with damp eyes. The cold, calculating man was breaking in front of her. There's something else, Oladele added with difficulty. Emeka looked at him with contained fury. Speak. Your mother filed a complaint after the separation. Amara's eyes widened. A complaint? Yes. Oladele continued. She claimed she was pregnant. Emeka's heart almost stopped, and your father contested the declaration. He alleged it wasn't his child. Emeka felt nauseous. Is that true? There was no DNA test. The case was closed due to a lack of legal resources on your mother's part. The silence was devastating. Amara felt Mama Ada's story beginning to fit. That baby was born? Emeka asked, his voice barely audible. Oladele took a deep breath. Yes. The world stopped. Where is he? Emeka whispered. Oladele swallowed. There are no subsequent records in our archives. Emeka felt like he couldn't breathe. What do you mean, no records? After the lawsuit, your father paid an out-of-court settlement. Amara felt her blood boil. A settlement? Yes. In exchange for Elvira abandoning any claim. Emeka closed his eyes tightly. The image of his father, always so upright and honorable in public, began to crumble. Do you know what this means? He said, his voice broken. It means I have a brother or sister somewhere. Amara stepped forward, and that she didn't lie. Emeka looked at Amara for the first time with something different in his eyes. It wasn't superiority. It was vulnerability. I need to find him. Oladele shook his head. Almost 30 years have passed. I don't care. Emeka took the photo again. I won't let money bury the truth again. Amara felt that something was changing deeply in him. He was no longer the man who criticized her gesture in the park. He was a son, a wounded son. Chief Nwadike, she said softly. Perhaps Mama Ada knows something more. Emeka nodded. We're going to see her today. Hours later, the three returned to the Lagos City Park. Mama Ada was on the same bench. When she saw Emeka approach with determined steps, her expression was a mix of fear and hope. We need to talk, he said bluntly. Mama Ada nodded. The three sat down. Emeka took a deep breath. It's true, my father lied. You didn't die. Tears filled the old woman's eyes. I knew it. I knew it. And the baby? He continued. What happened? Mama Ada's face filled with pain. He was born in a public clinic in Ikeja. Amara felt a chill. And then they told me there were complications, that he needed special care, that he would be transferred. Emeka felt his heart breaking. You saw him only once. The old woman's voice was barely a whisper. They took him from me. They said it was for his own good. Amara closed her eyes. Did they give you any documents? Mama Ada slowly shook her head. Only a letter saying the child had been adopted. Emeka felt a punch in his chest. Adopted? Yes. The silence was absolute. Do you have that letter? Mama Ada nodded. I kept it all these years. Emeka looked at the horizon. The world he knew was made of carefully constructed lies. I'm going to find him. Amara looked at him. There was determination in his voice. It wasn't the old pride. It was necessity. Mama Ada trembled. Emeka, I don't want to cause you more pain. He looked at her with moist eyes. The pain is already here. What I want is the truth. The wind blew strong in the park. Amara felt that the story was about to become even deeper, because if that child had been adopted, then someone had grown up without knowing who they really were. And if Emeka found him, nothing would ever be the same. The air in the Lagos City Park was no longer the same. There was something in Emeka's gaze that Amara had never seen before. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't control. It was urgency, a silent urgency that doesn't come from pride, but from emptiness. Mama Ada, sitting on the bench, clutched her worn bag as if it contained the last piece of her past. The letter is in my room, she said with a trembling voice. I never dared to throw it away. Emeka nodded. Let's go now. Amara hesitated for a second. She had never seen the millionaire walk so fast, without caring who was watching him. He didn't have his usual rigid posture. He didn't look like the man who gave orders in millionaire meetings. He looked like a son afraid of arriving too late. Mama Ada lived in a modest guest house in Ikeja, 20 minutes from the park, an old building with peeling paint and the smell of dampness. Emeka stopped in front of the rusted metal door. That place didn't fit his world of marble and glass, but he entered. The room was small, a simple bed, an antique wardrobe, a table with an old lamp, and in a box under the bed, the past. Mama Ada knelt with difficulty and pulled out a cardboard box wrapped in plastic. Her hands trembled. I never thought you'd come back for this, she whispered. Emeka knelt in front of her. For the first time, his eyes were not above someone. They were at the same level. Mama Ada opened the box. There were old photos, newspaper clippings, a child's bracelet, and a yellowed white envelope. She held it for a few seconds before handing it to him. "It says everything they let me know here." Emeka took the envelope. His hands were no longer steady. He opened it. The paper crinkled as it unfolded. Amara watched in silence. The document bore the seal of a public clinic. Female patient, Elvira Moreno. Male newborn, stable condition, transfer authorized. Further down, a typed note. Minor to be delivered under private adoption protocol. Mother signs voluntary cession of rights. Emeka felt his blood boil. "Voluntary cession?" Mama Ada murmured. She shook her head with tears in her eyes. "They made me sign when I was sedated. They said if I didn't, I would never see you again." The silence was devastating. Amara felt a huge weight on her chest. Emeka crumpled the paper. "This is illegal." "At that time, no one listened to a woman without money," Mama Ada replied. Emeka took a deep breath. "Does it say the name of the adoptive family?" Mama Ada shook her head. "I never knew more." Amara approached slowly. "Chief Nwadike, with the protocol number, perhaps the file can be traced." Emeka looked at her, and in his gaze was something new. Respect. "You're right." He picked up the phone. "Oladela," he said as soon as someone answered. "I need you to trace an adoption protocol from 1995. Public clinic in Ikeja." There was a silence on the other end. "That's complicated, Emeka. Those are old files. I don't care." "Find it." He hung up. He turned to Mama Ada. "I'm not leaving this like this." The old woman looked at him with fear and hope mixed. "Emeka, if you find him, maybe he won't want to know anything about us." That possibility hit hard, because seeking the truth also means accepting rejection. "It doesn't matter," he said with a firm voice. "He has a right to know." Amara felt that the man in front of her was not the same. There was something more human in his words, something that money had never given him. 2 days later, Oladel called. "I found something." Emeka was in his study. Amara was cleaning in silence, but her ear was attentive. "The file was transferred to a private adoption agency," Oladele continued. "It closed in 2002, but the archives were absorbed by another institution." Emeka stood up. "Give me the address." That same afternoon, Emeka and Amara drove to an office in downtown Lagos. Amara had never ridden in that car as a passenger. She always rode in the back or took public transport. Now she was sitting next to the Millionaire. The silence was different, not uncomfortable, but laden with meaning. "Thank you," he said suddenly. Amara looked at him, surprised. "For what, sir?" "For not giving up on the coffee." She lowered her gaze. "Sometimes, small things change. Big things." Emeka nodded slowly. Perhaps all his life he had been looking for gigantic solutions when what he needed was something simple. They arrived at the office. A woman greeted them. "We are looking for information about an adoption from 1995, Emeka said, showing the document. The woman reviewed the digital files patiently. Eternal minutes passed. Finally, she looked up. "Here it is." Emeka felt his heart pounding in his ears. The minor was adopted by a couple with the surname Okoro. Amara held her breath. "Do they live in Lagos?" "No. They moved to Abuja 2 years later." Emeka felt the world shift. "The child's name?" The woman hesitated. "It was legally changed. He is now listed as Chinedu Obafemi." Chinedu. The name resonated in Emeka's chest like an unknown echo. Current age, 28 years. The same calculation they had made. Amara felt the story become real. It wasn't just a memory, it was a living person. "Can we get an address?" The woman shook her head. "Only under legal process." Emeka clenched his jaw. "We will initiate it." As they left, Amara noticed something. Emeka wasn't smiling, nor was he euphoric. He was scared. "Are you afraid?" she asked softly. Emeka didn't respond immediately. "I'm afraid he'll hate me." Amara felt tenderness. Perhaps he won't. Perhaps he will. The millionaire who never feared losing money now feared losing an opportunity. That night, Emeka returned to the guest house. Mama Ada was waiting for him, sitting on the bed. "Did you find anything?" "Yes." She held her breath. "He's alive." Tears welled up uncontrollably. "His name is Chinedu. He lives in Abuja." Mama Ada covered her face. "Thank you. Thank you." Emeka sat beside her and, for the first time in decades, hugged her. Amara, standing at the door, felt the world stop. That hug wasn't elegant. It wasn't perfect. It was clumsy. It was late, but it was real. And sometimes, what's real is worth more than what's perfect. "I'm going to look for him," Emeka said with a firm voice. Mama Ada looked at him with fear. What if he doesn't want to see us? Emeka took a deep breath. Then at least he'll know we tried. Amara understood something profound in that instant. The coffee was never just coffee. It was the bridge. It was the spark that opened a door closed for almost 30 years. As they were about to leave, Mama Ada remembered something. There's something else. Emeka looked at her. The day they took the baby from me, there was a nurse who was crying. Amara frowned. Why? Because she said it wasn't fair. Emeka felt a pang. Do you remember her name? Mama Ada thought. I think it was Mama Chica. Amara's eyes widened. My mother's name is Mama Chica. The silence was absolute. Emeka slowly turned to Amara. What did you say? She swallowed. My mum worked many years in a public clinic in Ikeja in the 90s. The world changed again. Is she still alive? Emeka asked. Yes. Emeka's heart pounded. I need to talk to her. Amara felt that destiny was weaving something much bigger than they imagined. Because if her mother was that nurse, then there was someone else who knew the truth. And perhaps there were details that had not yet come to light. Emeka looked at Mama Ada. This doesn't end here. And for the first time, his voice didn't sound like a business promise. It sounded like the determination of a son who was no longer willing to live in lies. The past was beginning to open up, and what they would discover in Abuja could change not only Chinedu's life, but also Emeka's and Amara's. Because sometimes, when you decide to seek the truth, you discover that your story was connected to more people than you imagined. The journey from Ikeja to Amara's mother's house was silent. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was a silence that weighed heavily. Emeka drove with his gaze fixed ahead, but his mind was decades back, in a public clinic, in a delivery room, in a forced signature. Amara had her hands clasped on her lap. She never imagined that the simple gesture of bringing coffee would end up connecting her life with the history of her own boss. My mom doesn't talk much about the past, she said in a low voice. She was always reserved about her work. Emeka nodded. I just need her to tell the truth. Amara looked at him from the corner of her eye. For the first time, she didn't see him as Chief Nwadike. She saw him as a man who was reconstructing his identity piece by piece. They arrived at a simple house in a quiet neighborhood of Ikeja. Light blue painted walls, a small garden with potted plants. Amara got out first, knocked on the door. A woman in her late 50s opened it. Hair pulled back, warm gaze, noble weariness. Amara? She asked, surprised. Is everything all right? Amara took a deep breath. Mama, we need to talk. The woman looked at Emeka, recognized him instantly. The blood drained from her face. You, she whispered. Emeka felt a punch in his chest. Are you Mama Chica? She didn't respond immediately. Her eyes began to water. Yes. Amara felt her heart pound. Mama, did you work at the public clinic in Ikeja in 1995? Mama Chica closed her eyes for a second. Yes. The silence grew heavy. Emeka took a step forward. My mother gave birth there that year. Mama Chica looked at him as if she had been waiting for this moment for years. I know. Amara felt the ground disappear beneath her. What? Mama Chica took a deep breath. Come in. They entered. The living room was small but cozy. Mama Chica sat down slowly. Her hands trembled. I always knew this day would come, she said. Emeka felt a chill. Then you know what happened. Mama Chica lowered her gaze. Your mother didn't want to sign. Emeka's heart stopped. How? They told her the baby needed special care, that it would be better to transfer him. She was weak, vulnerable, and she was sedated. Amara covered her mouth with her hand. They forced her. Mama Chica nodded. The child's father was present. He had lawyers. He had influence. Emeka felt rage beginning to boil. My father? Mama Chica looked at him with compassion. Yes. The silence was devastating. I was young, Mama Chica continued. I had no power. I could only observe. Amara felt a lump in her throat. Why were you crying? She asked. Mama Chica looked at her daughter. Because I saw a mother separated from her child without truly understanding what she was signing. Emeka felt the air grow heavy. The baby was healthy? Mama Chica met his gaze. Yes, that word fell like a bomb. He didn't need transfer. He didn't need adoption. Amara felt indignation course through her body. Then it was a deception? Mama Chica nodded. Yes. Emeka stood up abruptly. My father bought everyone's silence. Mama Chica gently shook her head. Not everyone's. Emeka looked at her. I kept a copy of the file. The hearts of all three quickened. You have it? Emeka asked, his voice tense. Mama Chica stood up. She walked to an old drawer, pulled out an envelope, and placed it on the table. I could never destroy it. Emeka opened the envelope with trembling hands. There were medical records, signatures, a handwritten note. Transfer requested by legal guardian. Mother under effect of sedatives. Emeka felt his blood boil. Amara observed every word. Does this prove she was forced? She asked. Mama Chica nodded. It proves she was not in a condition to sign voluntarily. The silence was profound. Emeka took a deep breath. With this, I can reopen the case. Mama Chica looked at him carefully. Emeka, don't just seek legal justice. He frowned. What do you mean? Seek emotional truth. Amara felt that phrase was important. Mama Chica continued. Your father acted out of fear. I don't justify what he did, but fear generates cruel decisions. Emeka clenched his fists. Fear of what? Mama Chica looked at him directly. Of losing control, of losing reputation, of losing you. The silence was revealing. Amara understood something in that instant. Emeka's father hadn't acted solely out of malice. He had acted out of obsession, out of a need for dominance. Does my brother know anything? Emeka finally asked. Mama Chica shook her head. I don't think so. Amara looked at her mother. Do you remember the name of the adoption intermediary? Mama Chica thought for a few seconds. It was a man named Mr. Dapo Adeyemi. He worked with high-profile families. Emeka felt the story begin to fit together like a dark puzzle. Is he still alive? I don't know. Amara felt that each answer opened more questions. Emeka took the documents. Thank you. Mama Chica looked at him with tenderness. I also lost something that day. He looked at her, surprised. I lost faith in the system. The silence became human. Amara approached her mother and hugged her. Thank you for not staying silent. Mama Chica held her tightly. I never wanted you to live with lies. Emeka observed the scene and understood something that hit him with brutal softness. Love isn't always perfect, but when it's sincere, it withstands decades. He turned to Mama Chica. Would you be willing to testify if necessary? Mama Chica took a deep breath. Yes. Amara felt proud. Her mother had not been an accomplice. She had been a witness, and now she would be a voice. As they left the house, Emeka walked in silence. What will you do now? Amara asked. Travel to Abuja. She looked at him. Alone? Emeka hesitated for a second. He didn't look at her directly. I want you to come. Amara's eyes widened. Me? You were the beginning of all this. Amara's heart pounded. She never imagined she would end up being part of something so big. Okay. Emeka took a deep breath. We leave early tomorrow. That night, as the Lagos sky was painted orange and violet, 3 lives were changing at the same time. Mama Ada, in her small room, prayed in silence. Mama Chica, in her blue house, looked at the past with less guilt, and Emeka, in his enormous mansion, understood for the first time that power didn't make him strong. The truth did. But the question that hung in the air was another. How would Chinedu react when he learned that his story was not what he was told, because finding him was just the beginning? The difficult part would be opening a door that had been closed for almost 30 years. And sometimes not everyone is ready to hear who they really are. The sunrise in Lagos was different that morning, not because the sky was clearer, not because the air was different, but because for the first time in many years, Chief Emeka Nwadike didn't wake up thinking about business, but about a name, Chinedu. Amara arrived punctually with a small backpack and a racing heart. She had never left the city accompanying her boss, much less for something so personal. The black car sped along the highway towards Abuja, while the silence between them was laden with unspoken thoughts. What if he doesn't want to see me? Emeka asked suddenly, without taking his eyes off the road. Amara took a few seconds to respond. Then, at least he will know there is a greater truth than the one he was told. Emeka nodded slowly. For years he had controlled contracts, companies, investments, but now he faced something he could not calculate with numbers. The fear of not being accepted. They arrived at midday. Oladele had managed to obtain an address through a preliminary legal process. Chinedu Obafemi lived in a quiet residential estate, far from ostentatious luxury, but comfortable. Amara looked at the aligned houses, the well-kept trees, the cars parked in front of each garage. Perhaps he had a good life, she whispered. Emeka felt a lump in his throat. I hope so. They parked in front of a cream-colored house with a small balcony. Emeka took a deep breath before getting out. For a second, he hesitated. It wasn't physical fear, it was emotional fear. He rang the doorbell. Eternal seconds passed. The door opened. A man about 28 years old appeared. Dark hair, firm gaze, calm posture, and something in his expression made the world stop because he had Emeka's same eyes. Amara noticed it instantly. Chinedu frowned slightly. Yes? Emeka opened his mouth, but the words didn't come out. He had never rehearsed that moment. He had never imagined that blood could recognize itself like this. Chinedu Obafemi, he finally managed to say, "Yes, who is looking for him?" Emeka swallowed. "My name is Emeka Nwadike." Chinedu looked at him without recognizing him. "Doesn't ring a bell." Amara took a small step forward. "We've come to talk to you about something important." Chinedu assessed their faces. He saw no threat, but he did see tension. "I'm working," he said firmly. "If it's commercial, I'm not interested." Emeka took a deep breath. "It's not commercial, it's personal." Chinedu hesitated. Finally, he opened the door a little wider. 5 minutes. They entered. The living room was simple, tidy. On a shelf were family photos. Chinedu with an older couple, smiling. Emeka felt something unexpected. Relief he had been loved. Chinedu sat opposite them. "Okay, what is it about?" Emeka felt his heart pounding in his chest. "Do you know you're adopted?" The silence was immediate. Chinedu blinked once, then twice. "Yes," he replied with surprising calm. "My parents never hid it from me." Amara felt the air circulating again. Chinedu crossed his arms. "What does that have to do with you?" Emeka held his gaze. "It has to do with your origin." Chinedu did not lose his composure. "My origin is this house, my parents, my life." Emeka nodded slowly. "And that doesn't change." The young man watched him cautiously, then explained. Emeka took a deep breath. "Your biological mother is named Elvira Moreno." Chinedu froze. The firm expression began to crack, barely perceptibly. "How do you know that?" "Because she is my mother too." The world froze. Amara felt time stop. Chinedu stood up abruptly. "What are you saying?" Emeka also stood up, but kept his distance. "I'm saying I'm your brother." The silence became almost painful. Chinedu began to pace back and forth. No, this is not possible." Amara watched, her heart racing. Chinedu ran a hand through his hair. "My parents told me my biological mother couldn't take care of me, that it was a voluntary decision." Emeka held his gaze. "It wasn't." Chinedu stopped. "Are you implying I was stolen?" The word fell like a stone. Emeka didn't dodge it. "I'm saying there was manipulation." Chinedu looked at him with disbelief and contained rage. "And why should I believe you?" Emeka took out the copy of the file, placed it on the table. "Because I have proof." Chinedu hesitated, took the papers. His eyes scanned the lines slowly. Amara could see his breathing change. This is fake," he whispered, though his voice didn't sound convinced. "There's a nurse willing to testify," Emeka added, "and my mother never stopped looking for you." Chinedu looked up abruptly. "Is she alive?" The question had no rage, it had fear. Emeka nodded. "Yes." Chinedu felt the world tilt. For years he had imagined his biological mother as a shadow, a closed mystery, and now they were telling him she was alive, and that she had loved him. His voice broke slightly, "I need to think." Amara spoke for the first time directly to him. "We didn't come to take anything from you." Chinedu looked at her. She held his gaze softly. "We came to give you the option of knowing the truth." The young man took a deep breath. "My adoptive parents are my family." Emeka nodded. "And no one wants to change that." Chinedu looked at the documents again. His world was beginning to totter. "Why now?" he finally asked. Emeka lowered his voice. "Because the truth came to light by chance, thanks to someone who brought coffee every day to a woman no one noticed." Chinedu frowned. "What?" Amara took a deep breath and told him everything. The park, the coffee, the confession, the investigation. Chinedu listened in silence. When she finished, the young man sank into the armchair. "This is too much." Emeka felt a strange impulse. He didn't know whether to hug him or step back. He chose the latter. "You don't have to decide anything today." Chinedu looked at him. There was something in Emeka's eyes that wasn't calculation. It was vulnerability. "She wants to see me?" he asked in a low voice. Emeka felt his heart stop. Yes. The silence was different. Now it wasn't rejection. It was fear mixed with curiosity. Chinedu looked at the family photo on the shelf, then turned his gaze back to Emeka. "I need to talk to my p-" It hadn't been a violent closure. It had been a half-open door. Chinedu approached the door. Before they left, he said, "If this is true, I want definitive proof." Emeka held his gaze. "You'll have it." When the car started back to the hotel, neither spoke for several minutes. Amara finally broke the silence. "He didn't throw us out." Emeka exhaled slowly. "That's something." He looked in the rearview mirror. "He has my eyes." Amara smiled slightly. "And your way of frowning?" Emeka let out a brief laugh. It wasn't a business laugh. It was human. But he knew the most difficult part was just beginning, because now it wasn't just about documents, it was about emotions. And emotions are not signed or filed, they are confronted. In Abuja, Chinedu stood in front of the closed door, holding the papers, feeling that the life he knew had cracks. And for the first time in his life, he wondered who he really was. That night in Abuja, no one slept peacefully. In the hotel room, Emeka remained seated by the window, looking at the distant city lights, as if he could find an answer in them. Amara was in the adjoining room, but she also couldn't fall asleep. She knew that what was at stake was no longer just a reunion. It was identity. It was belonging. It was a wound that had been open for almost 30 years. Meanwhile, in the cream-colored house in the quiet estate, Chinedu was sitting at the dining table with his adoptive parents, Deacon Emeka and Sister Ifeoma Okoro. The folder with the documents lay open in front of them. The silence weighed like a storm before it broke. "Where did you get that?" Sister Ifeoma asked with a trembling voice. Chinedu took a deep breath. "A man named Emeka Nwadike came to see me today. He says he's my brother." Deacon Emeka remained immobile. The surname fell on the table like an uncomfortable echo. "Nwadike," he repeated slowly. Sister Ifeoma lowered her gaze. Chinedu noticed. "Did you know anything?" Silence was the answer. "Mama," he insisted softly. "I need to know." Sister Ifeoma began to cry silently. Deacon Emeka placed a hand on her shoulder. "We knew the adoption was unclear." Chinedu felt his stomach clench. "Unclear how?" Deacon Emeka sighed deeply. "The intermediary assured us it was a voluntary session, but there were comments, rumors that the biological father had a lot of power." Chinedu felt the world begin to tilt. "And yet, you signed." Sister Ifeoma looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "We wanted you so much, son, that we didn't ask enough questions." The pain in her voice was real. Chinedu felt that his anger had no place to settle because his adoptive parents were not villains. They had loved him, cared for him, given him a stable childhood, but now another truth existed. "Did you know my biological mother was alive?" he asked, his voice broken. Sister Ifeoma vehemently shook her head. "They told us she had passed away shortly after childbirth." Chinedu closed his eyes. The lie had been bigger than he imagined, not just for him, but for everyone. The silence grew heavy. "Do you want to meet her?" Deacon Emeka asked finally. Chinedu hesitated. His heart pounded. "I don't know." Sister Ifeoma took his hands. "Son, loving you never depended on your origin, but if you need answers, we won't stop you." That phrase gave him something he didn't expect. Freedom. Chinedu took a deep breath. "I need to see her." The next morning, Emeka's phone vibrated. An unknown message. "I want to talk alone. No lawyers. No pressure." Emeka felt his heart race. Amara, who was sitting across from him at the breakfast table, noticed the change in his expression. "It's him." Emeka nodded. "He wants to talk alone." Amara looked at him seriously. "Go." Emeka hesitated. "What if he rejects me?" Amara held his gaze. "Then at least you will have been brave." Emeka took a deep breath and replied, "I'm here." "Tell me, where?" The answer came minutes later. Abuja Garden Park, 11 a.m. Fate seemed to repeat the initial scene, another park, another bench, another conversation that could change everything. Chinedu was sitting when Emeka arrived. He wasn't wearing a suit, no expensive watch, just jeans and a simple shirt. Emeka stopped in front of him. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. The same cheekbones, the same jawline. Chinedu broke the silence. "I didn't come to fight." Emeka nodded. "Me neither." They sat down. For a moment, neither knew what to say. "I always knew something didn't fit," Chinedu finally confessed. "But I didn't know what it was." Emeka listened without interrupting. "I'm not here to take away your life," he said honestly. "I just want you to have the option of knowing the truth." Chinedu lowered his gaze. "Why now?" Emeka took a deep breath. "Because a woman no one noticed reminded me what it means not to abandon." Chinedu looked up. "Did she really look for me all these years?" Emeka nodded. "She never stopped." The silence became soft, not tense. Chinedu swallowed. "And you?" Emeka hesitated for a second. "I didn't know you existed, but now that I do, I can't ignore it." That sincerity changed something in the air. Chinedu took a deep breath. "I want to see her." The words were simple, but they weighed like an opening door. Emeka felt his chest fill with something warm. It wasn't triumph. It was relief. That afternoon, Chinedu spoke with his adoptive parents. He explained his decision. Sister Ifeoma cried. Deacon Emeka hugged him tightly. "Your heart is big," he told him. "That's what matters." Chinedu felt he wasn't losing a family, he was expanding his story. When the car left for Lagos, Emeka looked at Chinedu in the rearview mirror with a mixture of emotion and fear. Amara, sitting in the back with Chinedu, felt she was witnessing something sacred. No one spoke much. But the silence was no longer heavy. It was expectant. Mama Ada was sitting in her small room when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Emeka slowly opened the door. Chinedu stood on the threshold. Time seemed to stop. Mama Ada looked up. Their eyes met. The air disappeared. "Chinedu," she whispered, as if the name had been waiting on her lips for decades. Chinedu felt his heart pounding in his chest. He had imagined that moment many times since he knew the truth, but the reality was different, more fragile, more human. He approached slowly. Mama Ada stood up with difficulty. Her hands trembled. "Forgive me," was the first thing she said. "Forgive me for not protecting you." Chinedu felt something within him break because he saw no guilt. He saw pain. "It wasn't your fault," he whispered. Tears began to fall without permission. Mama Ada extended her hand, but didn't dare to touch him. Chinedu took the final step and hugged her. It wasn't a perfect hug. It was clumsy, full of tears held back for years. Amara felt her chest explode. Emeka watched with moist eyes, because that hug not only healed his mother, it also healed him. Mama Ada cried silently. "I thought of you every day," she whispered. Chinedu closed his eyes. "I didn't know, but I always felt something was missing." Time became irrelevant. 30 years compressed into a single instant. Emeka approached slowly. Chinedu looked up. They looked at each other for a few seconds and, without saying anything, hugged each other too. It was a different hug, more restrained, but full of recognition. Amara understood something profound. Family isn't always lost. Sometimes it just hides under layers of lies. When the three of them sat down, the silence was gentle. Chinedu looked at Emeka. "I don't know what place I'll occupy in your life now." Emeka nodded. "We don't have to decide that today." Chinedu looked at Mama Ada. "I just want to get to know her, step by step." She smiled through tears. "That's enough." Amara felt that the story was reaching a point of light, but she knew something was still missing. Because healing isn't erasing the past, it's learning to live with it. And there were still unanswered questions about Emeka's father, about justice, about the decisions that had caused so much pain. But for the first time, the truth was no longer buried. It was sitting in that small room, breathing. And although the future was uncertain, there was hope. And sometimes hope is the greatest miracle. The hug didn't solve everything. It didn't erase the lost years. It didn't return the empty Christmases. It didn't exactly recompose what was broken, but it did something more important. It stopped the abandonment. And sometimes that's the beginning of healing. Chinedu decided to stay a few days in Lagos. Not at the guest house, not at the mansion, but at a small intermediate hotel, because he needed space to understand what he was feeling. Emeka respected that. For the first time in his life, he didn't try to control the pace of something. He let it flow. Amara noticed every detail. The man who once gave curt orders now asked softly, "Are you comfortable? Do you need anything? Do you want to talk or prefer silence?" Chinedu was not used to such vulnerability, but he didn't reject it either. One afternoon, the three of them walked through the Lagos City Park, the same bench, the same story that began with a cup of coffee. Mama Ada was wearing a new sweater that Amara had given her. Chinedu watched her in silence. "Did you always come here?" he asked. She nodded. "It was the closest I could be to you without invading." Emeka felt a lump in his throat, and I never knew. Mama Ada looked at him with tenderness. "Don't blame yourself for what was hidden from you." Chinedu took a deep breath. "Why didn't you fight more?" The question wasn't an accusation, it was pain. Mama Ada held his gaze. "Because when everything is taken from you, sometimes all you have left is to survive." The silence was human, without reproaches, without judgments, only understanding. Emeka knew something was pending. His father's name still floated like a shadow. One night, in the mansion's study, he gathered Chinedu and Amara. "I don't want this to turn into a legal battle," he said firmly. "My father is no longer here. He cannot respond." Chinedu looked at him attentively. "And so, I want to do something different." Amara felt curious. Emeka took a deep breath. "I'm going to create a foundation in our mother's name." Mama Ada was present, her eyes filled with surprise. "For what?" "For women who have been silenced by power. For mothers who lost their children due to unjust decisions." Chinedu watched him. He no longer saw just the businessman. He saw the man who was choosing to heal instead of taking revenge. "That doesn't change what happened," Chinedu said. "No," Emeka responded, "but it can prevent it from happening again." The silence was filled with meaning. Amara felt tears in her eyes. She never imagined that a coffee would end up creating something so grand. The following days showed a real transformation. Emeka began to visit Mama Ada without haste. He sat and listened to stories from his childhood. He discovered details he never knew. that he liked to sleep hugging a cloth doll, that he was afraid of the dark, that he laughed loudly when he was happy. Chinedu also listened. He recognized himself in some traits and in others discovered differences that made him unique. They didn't compete. They didn't try to occupy a place that was already taken. They learned to coexist. Amara watched everything with a full heart because she had been a witness to the beginning and now saw the fruit. One afternoon, Chinedu asked to speak with Emeka alone. They sat on the mansion's terrace. The sunset painted the sky orange and violet. "I don't know what place I'll occupy in your life," Chinedu said honestly. Emeka didn't hesitate. "Whatever you want." Chinedu looked at him. "I don't want your money." Emeka smiled gently. "I didn't offer it." There was a comfortable silence. "I want time," Chinedu continued. "I want to get to know you without pressure." Emeka nodded. "I want that too." And for the first time, both smiled without tension. It wasn't a grandiose promise. It was something simpler, presence. One morning, Amara returned to the park with a thermos. Mama Ada was no longer alone. Chinedu accompanied her. Emeka also arrived minutes later. The four of them sat down. Amara served the coffee. The steam rose slowly. Mama Ada smiled. "Do you know what's most incredible?" she said, looking at Amara. "That it all started with this." Amara lowered her gaze humbly. "I just didn't want her to be alone." Chinedu held the cup in his hands. Sometimes the small things change what seemed impossible. Emeka looked at Amara. "I never apologized to you." She looked up, surprised. "For what, sir?" "For believing that helping was a waste of time." Amara smiled gently. "It's never too late to see things differently." Emeka took a deep breath, and in that instant, he understood something no business had taught him. Power isn't in controlling, it's in connecting. Life doesn't give back lost years. It doesn't erase lies. It doesn't exactly mend what was broken. But it does offer opportunities. Opportunities to choose differently, to stop the chain of silence, to transform pain into purpose. A coffee isn't just coffee. It can be companionship. It can be a bridge. It can be the beginning of a buried truth. Sometimes we believe we need grand gestures to change the world. But the world changes when someone decides not to pass by. When someone looks at those everyone ignores. When someone says, "I won't leave you." Emeka learned that money doesn't buy lost time, but it can invest in justice. Chinedu understood that knowing the truth doesn't erase the love he received, it expands it. Mama Ada discovered that it was never too late to embrace. And Amara confirmed something she already knew in her heart, that kindness is never small. If this story left something in your chest, if you ever felt the world was too cold, remember this. You can always be the warm coffee in someone's winter. Because we don't know what doors a simple gesture can open. And perhaps, without realizing it, you are changing a story much bigger than your own. Thank you for reading this far. If this story touched your heart, share it and tell us in the comments. Has a small gesture ever changed your life? Because sometimes, what seems insignificant is exactly what saves everything.